Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys football, continuing to cover the college football playoffs. As we're taking a look at the matchup between the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Georgia Bulldogs. I think this is a great matchup. Georgia has kind of been untouchable at times throughout the last two seasons, but if there's a team that can kind of put Georgia in some conflict and push them where they might not be as strong, it is the Ohio State Buckeyes. I think this is going to be an absolutely great game. Before we jump into it, though, I just want to say thank you guys for the support you guys have shown the channel. Again, if you guys enjoy the content, consider subscribing. That is the best way you can support the fellas, and we really do appreciate all the support you guys have shown over the last couple of weeks. Dill, I'm going to kick this one off to you. What are your early takes on this matchup between the Buckeyes and the Bulldogs?
Yeah, doesn't this feel like a matchup we've all been waiting for 2
Yeah.
years now? Because everyone's been like, oh, well, what is the one thing that can expose Georgia? It's being able to whip the ball around the yard. And who's done that better than Ohio State for the last couple of years? Probably nobody. So we're all finally getting to see it. I know I'm really excited about it as a Michigan fan. But yeah, this is I don't know. Like, I've been waiting for it.
What I want to start with is, in this again, Michigan fans, if you guys have been watching us, we are Michigan fans. We watch a lot of Michigan football. We obviously watched the Ohio State Michigan game, and I think there's a little overreaction between how bad Ohio State is on defense. Yes, Michigan was able to put up some points against this Ohio State team. Most of their yards in that game came from 5 plays. Ohio State, from a down-to-down basis, was actually very good on defense against Michigan. That being said, you can't give up those explosive plays, and you know Jim Knowles is going to go and has been working for the last month and looking at how we can stop the run of the Georgia Bulldogs, but also not give up the explosive plays over the top. Georgia has some fast receivers that can create separation down the field, and I think that's going to be the key to this game because, again, you look at Ohio State, you know Georgia's going to want to run the football. They have a 3-headed backfield that is very, very good when you look at guys like Kenny McIntosh, Kendall Milton, Dejon Edwards. Ohio State, outside of a couple of runs by Donovan Edwards in the second half of that Ohio State-Michigan game, has been very, very good against the run, only allowing 3.2 yards per play or per rush to opposing running backs. I think the key to this game is, can Ohio State stop the run without committing that extra safety into the box? Because when they had to do that against Michigan, that's when Michigan was getting you over the top.
Well, that's, to me, the problem is the secondary play at Ohio State hasn't really been great
No.
year, I wouldn't say, or probably for the last few years, frankly. So I do think they're very much in a pick your poison. I don't know that they can stop Michigan's run as consistently or Georgia's run that, God, it might even be better given there was no Blake Corum for Michigan. I'm not 100% sure they can do it without playing a very aggressive 8-ish man box consistently. And I know guys like Tommy Eichenberg have really stepped up, and they've got Michael Hall in the middle who's been playing really well and certainly been helpful for that team. And obviously the edge guys have probably been the stars, if you will, of that defense. But I don't know. I kind of have questions whether they can play the 7-man box or that type of defense and get their stops, because they do need to protect, but on the other flip side, they need to protect that secondary, because I don't think they can match up well with pretty much any of the big dog teams right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you do look at maybe one potential problem is Stetson Bennett throwing he can throw a good deep ball, but that's not necessarily how they move the ball. And Stetson Bennett's been awesome. 3,400 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. They work the middle of the field a lot. They don't work necessarily the vertical passing game as much. A lot of their production through the air comes to guys like Ladd McConkey, kind of short intermediate routes, Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington. I don't know. I think a key for Georgia here is getting guys who are kind of more your speedsters like Arian Smith down the field and kind of hitting those explosive plays, which Georgia hasn't been great at doing.
Yeah, and that's one thing I think people are very much discounting as they talk about Georgia maybe not being the team they were last year, and I know I've been saying it. But the one X factor is Stetson Bennett is playing far better football than this year compared to last. At least
football we've seen him play.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously Brock Bowers is just continuing to be an all-time great tight end. Whatever level football, he's just incredible. So they have This offense, I think, is really pretty much. I think it's probably more dangerous than it was last year, to be honest with you.
I think the offense this year for Georgia is better. I don't think the defense is quite as good. I think most Georgia fans would agree. I mean, what you saw last year was a generational defense. The amount of talent they put out into the NFL and the amount of talent that's succeeding in the NFL, and just the numbers from last year, it was smothering. It was hard to move the ball against them, whether it was on the ground, through the air. I think it takes a step back, and that's a good time to take a look at what Ohio State can do to maybe get to the Georgia Bulldogs a little bit. They're healthier. Travion Henderson should be 100%. That's going to be good. Mayan Williams also should be 100%. That should be good. And when you look at what Ohio State can do, they're going to spread you out. And I get you don't have Eddie Jackson Smith the jig, but you still probably have the best wide receiver in the country, Marvin Harrison Jr. Julian Fleming is coming on. Cade Stover's been great at the tight end position. I think one of the key matchups is, can a guy like Keely Ringo, a guy who I think should be a top 15 pick in the NFL draft, match up with a bigger and more physical Marvin Harrison Jr.? Because if there's a cornerback I'm picking to match up against Marvin Harrison Jr., it is Keely Ringo. Because Marvin Harrison is a big body guy that likes to play physical, and Keely Ringo is 6'2", 210 pounds, and can run a 4.40.
Now, one thing I'm interested to see with Marvin Harrison in what you've seen Keely Ringo give a little bit up is deep balls, especially last year. Now, Marvin Harrison, as much as he is a bigger physical player, something tells me the guy can also fly. He just looks like he's got the body that
is a freak.
That can run like a Julio Jones or something, and even at the size. So I think this is going to be an interesting game, aside from just a matchup, but like to see what Marvin Harrison is, maybe how good he truly is if he can really get loose deep and be an impact player down the field. They're going to need that from him because that's probably going to be their recipe to score. And B, I mean, if he shows that, God, you talking about as good of a wideout as we've probably ever seen, because he's so good in contested catches.
And that's probably the big question mark is, can Georgia stop Ohio State's passing attack? Because they have so many ways. I mean, we just listed Marvin Harrison Jr. probably the best. Emeka Buka is very, very good. Julian Fleming has had struggles with drops, but you can't deny the physical attributes and the talent that he has. Can you spread Georgia out? Can you create some mismatches in the back end? I like Georgia's secondary a lot. Malachi Starks has been awesome. Keely Ringo. I think Christopher Smith is one of the most underrated safeties in the whole entire country. CJ Stroud can't turn the ball over, and you're going to have to try to outscore Georgia, because I think Georgia's going to be able to move the ball in this Ohio State defense, and I think it's going to be a little bit of a shootout. And getting to kind of who we think is going to win the game, maybe cover, I think this game could go over. Like, Georgia's going to run the football. I think they'll be able to, but I also think Ohio State's going to be able to score their points as well.
I think this game's going to go high because, frankly, I think Georgia's going to throw for a lot more yards than people think they are, just like Michigan did.
Yeah.
I think this secondary is the place to attack on Ohio State, and I think a lot of the teams that were a little weaker in Ohio State's mostly in Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State are obviously the only three teams the three of them played, if you will. Notre Dame to an extent is in that, but I wouldn't say they're really at that level. But Ohio State, when they can rush the passer, they can kind of hide their secondary. The problem is when they go play in offensive lines that can handle them up front, I'm not convinced that they can as easily hide that secondary as they could all year, because when they can turn JT Tuiamaloa loose or Jack Sawyer, I know I missed that name, but tried my best. And obviously Harrison, like, you got three guys who are playing at really high levels right now. But again, I just don't see them being able to really dominate this Georgia offensive line, because you got an offensive line at Georgia that very much in that Joe Moore award conversation.
Can Georgia's defensive front, and we obviously haven't mentioned Jalen Carter, is kind of a given as just like the best non-quarterback in the entire country. Like, Ohio State's offensive line is no slouch either. I mean, Paris Johnson, I think, should be a top 20 pick. DeWanda Jones might be a first-round pick. Luke Weipler at the center position, very, very good. I mean, this has also been one of the best offensive lines for Ohio State, and this might be one of the offensive lines that Georgia might not be able to dominate.
Well, that's the thing. Georgia haven't been swallowing teams up front on defense, and obviously most of their pressure is coming from inside, led by Carter. but I don't think they have the edge guys that they had last year, which I think's been hurting them a little bit, especially with Nolan Smith having to have missed most of the year with the pectoral injury. But that's kind of like the thing is I think both these teams are going to be able to score a fair amount. I'm a big Stetson fan right now. I think what he's doing, I think Ohio State's going to have their hands full in the secondary for sure. So I'm kind of with you on the over. The game pick, I think, is harder. I think with it 6.5 makes me think Georgia, but I'm not like in love with that.
Yeah, see, 6.5. I would like if I got 7.5. If you gave me 7.5 points for Ohio State, I'd probably take it
because I 49-42 or something.
I think both teams are going to score, and I think this game is going to be close. I think this Ohio State offense is going to be able to give Georgia some problems. And I think, again, one of the keys is can Georgia win up front on the offensive side of the ball and keep Ohio State and C.J. Stroud off the field. One X factor I want to say, and we'll kind of end on that, is Ryan Day is going to need to – I think against Michigan he played a little scared. And he was playing not to lose. There's some 4th and 3s in the second half or even the first half where they didn't go for it. I mean, you have the best quarterback.
Like they should have been going for all.
You have one of the best quarterbacks in the whole entire country. Let him go win you the football game, and they continue to play not to lose.
You could see how disappointed Stroud was every time. They'd always be like, "Keep me on the field." Ryan Day call him off, and you just see like a dejected look, and I think that carries down to your team. So I think Ryan Day it almost sounded like in the press conference he kind of acknowledged it. He's like,
he knew
we're not going to be like afraid of the moment. Like we're going to seize our second chance at life and we're going to try to go take it. And I think that's a big thing you mentioned. I think if they did that Michigan game might look a little different.
And you're looking at this ain't like the Iowa offense. You have like the best offense in the whole entire country. Keep the ball in their hands. Like let them go win you the football game. Don't rely on your defense. That's, I mean, as good as it's been all year for Ohio State. Like if I'm picking a player that I want to go win me the football game, it's C.J. Stroud and Marvin Harrison Jr. Yeah. And I think you're going to see Ohio State become more aggressive and kind of play as if they had a second chance at life.
They're not like, again, like when they lose to Michigan right now, you know how bad it hurts them and they feel like they should be the superior team and all that. And now Ryan Day's, that's 2 losses. And I think he's getting a little bit like, I don't want to say concerned, but it's obviously weighing on him to lose those. And yeah, I'm with you. He's got to cut it loose though. Now they're in the opposite situation where they don't have that much to lose there. So they gotta play like that, or else I don't think they can win this game because they're gonna need to score points. They can't be punting on their 45.
Can't do it.
Like, you can't.
I'm with you. They're gonna need to play to win this football game, but I do think they have a shot at winning this football game.
Oh, 100%.
That'll do it for the boys. Again, this is as much as I'm excited for the Michigan game, this game is going to be elite. This game is going to be really good. And again, if you see if that spread gets to 7.5, I really do like the Buckeyes because I do think this will be a 1-score game. Appreciate you guys checking us out as usual. If you do enjoy the content, of course, please consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.